Welcome to the Advisor's Edge. I'm Chad Ramberg here with Chuck Failla. This show is about helping advisors think more clearly about real decisions that shape their advisory firm, risk, clients, compliance, long-term durability. That's what we all need. And today we're joined by an interesting guy. This is Arnold Hsu and GReminders. And so we're going to be digging into what he's doing for the advisory industry. And thank you, Chuck, for joining us this summer day. And Arnulf, how are you guys?
No place I'd rather be.
Thank you. Arnulf, yeah, you have had an interesting launch into the software SaaS service. Is that kind of how you see GReminders?
Yeah, we're an AI SaaS platform, end-to-end meeting management built for the wealth management space.
Yeah, and that what we were talking about as we were getting ready for here is a little bit about how GReminders fits, because you're clearly pulling in with AI some tools and doing some cool stuff. They're not just meeting. So initially when you and I talked, I think we bumped into each other because I was looking at evaluating our Calendly and how that works. And then you expanded from there. But what I'd like to do before we talk about that is just a little bit more about where you came from. What got you to this space in your career?
Yeah, so look, I've been in enterprise software for more than 25 years. And wealth is a new space for me personally over the last few years, a very exciting industry, quite frankly. But I've been solving business problems through software, through enterprise software for businesses, really for the last 25 years. We built a sort of a data platform company back in the sort of late 90s, early 2000s, which we sold to CNET.com, which is now CBS Interactive. And then I had a project collaboration company, which was really a lot around file management, task management, so productivity, right? Productivity is you could weave that thread throughout my career. And that's also what we're doing today to a large extent, is efficiency and productivity. We sold that to a public company out of Atlanta in 2015, somewhere in that range. And then I had a sort of AI SaaS sales analytics company, which was leveraging sort of machine learning before generative AI was a thing, that we sold maybe 5-6 years ago to an Australian public company. And so this is really my fourth startup. I really enjoy, I'm a builder at heart, and I love building products and solving people's business problems, which is what I understand. So yeah, and that's what led us here. And we felt there was a big gap, quite frankly, in the wealth management space with regard to, it really started out in this kind of scheduling space, facilitating things like annual or biannual review processes and so forth. And then we saw sort of Gen AI come about and have really filled out a lot of the sort of pre-meeting prep capabilities, as well as post-meeting workflows and so forth that exist, and now have this kind of end-to-end meeting management system.
Okay. I've got just a few questions. Well, I got a bunch of questions, I guess, but the first one that frankly came to mind when I was reviewing what we're going to talk about here today is when did you get into this initially?
So we started GReminders in 2020.
In 2020. Okay. I'm trying to get the timeline because it seems like it's very clearly similar to Calendly and OneHub. Did you do GReminders before or after them? I'm trying to get a chicken and the egg thing, like which came
after, right? So Calendly is a good product, OneHub is a good product, but they're very horizontal. And so what I mean is they work for many different industries. I think Calendly is dominant in sales, right? In general, recruiting is a big space for them.
Yeah.
But they're very horizontal, and so they work across a variety of different industries. And when we launched in 2020, quite frankly, we were very focused on this kind of SMS reminder space, which is the genesis of the company name, but then quickly expanded into scheduling, and then started really looking at the kind of concentrations that we had of different types of businesses. Financial services was one sector, healthcare was another sector, quite frankly. And as we started peeling the onion and digging in, we realized that these other systems like Calendly and OneHub and so forth did exist, but they weren't deeply integrated with the systems that wealth managers use, right? So specifically systems like a Redtail or a Wealthbox or PreciseFP or DocuPace or something like that. And so we started building all this sort kind of plumbing to natively and deeply integrate with those systems. And so now if you are a financial services firm or wealth management firm, and you look at Calendly on its own, you look at GReminders on its own, chances are you're going to pick our system because, again, it's deeply integrated with those systems directly, as opposed to loosely tied to Outlook, and then Outlook has to sync to some other systems, or you're using middleware like a Zapier or something like that, if you're familiar with those systems, that really are a DIY glue, duct tape, for you to pull those systems together. And quite frankly, that stuff tends to be a bit brittle and fragile. And again, we do this natively, and we do it in a turnkey way.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And
mentioned, sorry, go ahead, Chuck. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then the other part of this too is the idea of Zox and Jump, which we're all pretty familiar with. And it seems like you're expanding into that as well. And this is more of a broad question, not even just for your company, but it just seems like everyone is in a race to do everything. Is that an overstatement? But it's what it seems like to me. And I go to a lot of conferences, and I happen to love tech, so I talk to a lot of folks on this. But holy smoke, it seems like everyone started here, but they're doing this. Now they're all doing everything. And it does seem AI is enabling that in a pretty big way.
It is. Gen AI is probably one of the most impactful things we've ever seen, much like the Industrial Revolution or the internet, or maybe even more, right? It has given a big boost, right? So it's the biggest opportunity, and at the same time, it's also the biggest threat, right? Really all at the same time. But, for us, when we looked at what we were doing in this kind of meeting management space, I've never seen, when we look at the puzzle pieces, so to speak, I've never seen like the note taker component fit so neatly into a story of ours, quite frankly, because we're already in the scheduling area, right? So we were doing all this sort of stuff pre-meeting. And then in late 24, I think we added sort of the note taker piece component to it. And then we added pre-meeting prep. And again, it's all in this meeting management space, right? And then these post-meeting workflows, notes, push those back into the system of record, help with follow-ups, tasks, emails, and so on and so forth. And then it made a lot of natural sense to expand that beyond to things like AI assistants, which is not just a chat bot, but also these different kind of agents that like do stuff. For example, before a meeting, you have this kind of pre-meeting brief, which aggregates data from emails and notes and financial planning tools and statements and documents and trusts and wills and all these sorts of things, puts it together in a document. And from there, it's relatively easy to go generate, for example, a client PowerPoint presentation, right? That you can actually present to a client. And Gen AI enables a lot of that. And we think a smaller technology stack, deeply integrated, that has less moving parts, is inherently better. I'd rather a firm have 5 pieces of tech in their stack rather than 25, because you have more complexity, which inherently has potentially more issues. And so like interoperability for those systems is incredibly important.
Yeah, it was interesting. I think early on you mentioned the financial services industry as being exciting. And I'm just curious why. What do you see or intriguing or exciting or whatever adjective you want to use there? What for you as a business builder, okay, because clearly you've got deep expertise in the technology space. What attracts you or find interesting about that?
Well, I love solving problems, right? And so I really, again, at the heart, like I love building things. And so I'm a technologist by trade, I'm an engineer. So, but I'm also a business person, right? And so I understand problems, and I understand like workflows and how to automate and create efficiencies and those types of things. And I talk to a ton of customers every day, every week, and so on and so forth. And we're very good at taking manual things that people are doing, understanding where those bits live, could be different data sets and so on and so forth, tying those together and then delivering sort of an elegant solution. And my observation was that wealth management in general hadn't maybe had the same kind of tech enablement that say maybe technology sales or recruiting or other industries like that had. And so that's been an exciting area for us because we feel we can really enable these folks to save significant amounts of time, which they can basically then take and apply those to growing their business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then when we're talking about, because it makes sense to me what you're talking about is if we're removing, so we have fewer linkages of data and information, just basically removing the silly stuff, or maybe it's not silly stuff, but making it cleaner and just more effective. That makes sense to me. I'm curious, for most advisors, when you start doing that, where's the kind of the key things that you find that helps them out the most as you start cleaning that up?
There is a tremendous amount of sort of admin work that goes into client management, a tremendous amount. There's a KITSA survey that was done a couple of years ago around how much time an advisor spends per client per year on things like client prep, client scheduling, and so on and so forth. I think it's something like 20 hours per client per year, right? And so when we ran our own survey against people using systems like ours, right? Not just ours, but other systems in our space, we're seeing upwards of 45 to 50% time reduction against those things. And again, like there's just a ridiculous amount of manual stuff to get clients onto a calendar for a quarterly or biannual or annual review. Just very simple things like that, getting them to show up, doing all this pre-meeting prep, right? It takes hours to put these client presentations together. Technology now, especially with generative AI, is really amazing at cutting a lot of that admin stuff down. And so we've spent significant amount of time there. All of our customers are seeing a lot of benefit from that. And I think anybody, quite frankly, that's leveraging AI is going to see these types of gains. And then again, you can take that, and if you take that time and put that against growth, you're going to see AUM growth, you're going to see your business grow, and I think meaningful things will happen as a result of that.
Certainly. As business owners, we want to see meaningful things happen.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I've got a very broad question, and I've been asking this question to really anyone that I talk to that really seems to be plugged into technology, and clearly you are. And it's the following. At what point do we not even really have a CRM anymore? For most firms, certainly at our shop at Sovereign, the CRM is kind of our hub, but more and more we're doing things in a way that it's collecting information, processing it somewhere else, and showing it to someone somewhere else. And then I'm wondering, at what point do we not have the CRM? And it's just one big data lake, data warehouse, whatever it is, with a user interface, one for the advisors, one for the clients. And frankly, that's the direction we're going. Still driven by Salesforce. We still look at Salesforce as our source of truth, but soon, very few of our advisors and none of our clients will ever see Salesforce. They're going to see the data presented to them through this UI that lives in a data lake that has an AI overlay. At what point do we not even need Salesforce?
Well, I think you got to think about the definition of what a CRM is, and maybe the definition of that changes, right? So I think you talked about data lakes or data stores. I mean, Salesforce effectively is your system of record, and it is your database of record, right? So I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think that's going away. Now, the interface of how you engage with that database or that system of record may change and is changing to a large extent. It could be delivered to you through a chatbot, could be delivered to you through a variety of different agents that do stuff with the data. But I think structured data, which is really what Salesforce and other CRMs provide, places where you have fields, assets, numbers, dates of birth, things of that nature, I don't think that is going away. If you think about the way you should think about sort of software, in my opinion, is traditional software is deterministic, right? It's if, then, this, that. It's very specific, and you have a very deterministic outcome. AI is slightly less deterministic, right? It's a bit more fuzzy, and that's more subjective. But AI is able to leverage data from these deterministic systems to produce certain types of outputs or certain outcomes, right? It could be briefs, it could be presentations, it could be really any kind of documents or other forms. So I think the definition of the CRM may change, but I think you still, at the end of the day, you still have a system of record, and that is still, I think, a critical aspect of it. And the data that flows into it, either through deterministic automations, right? So specific connections to systems like a Schwab or a Black Diamond or whatever, I think those are still valuable. But then getting data out of other elements or other areas like state PDFs or files or statements and things like that. Again, AI can help extract that structured data, but you want a human in the loop to verify, yeah, this is correct, and then let me push it.
Right.
So I think the definition will change, but I think the core of the system of records.
Yeah, that's interesting because we use Salesforce, and right now we're using a bunch of different tools from an AI perspective to figure out how to get that either minorly structured or very unstructured information to become more useful. And for us, that's why we do it too, because Salesforce adds that structure, which is maybe more simplistically put, but if I catch what you're saying, that's really what you're saying.
Yeah, that's right. And we even, like, just earlier this week, we released this AI field extraction component where you literally take a set of documents, you upload it, it extracts all the things that map to your CRM. So all the different fields and so forth, all of the fields, all the custom objects and so forth that you have within Salesforce, for example, and then basically surfaces them. And then an advisor or a client service associate might look through that and it says yes, and then pushes those back. Same thing happens for call transcripts, for example.
Yeah, you got a question there, Chuck?
No, right this second.
Okay. What's interesting, so on the, because I'm with you, Arnulf, when we're talking about having as few interconnections, so it keeps the clean, simple process as much as we can. But then we also have a situation where we have these legacy systems that we've been using. Okay. And I love working with folks that focus on financial services. We're on the edge of financial services. Technically, insurance brokers are, but since we're serving advisors, I love working with those that are working with advisors. But then I look at what you're doing and I'm intrigued. Okay. So I'm just going to say that. And I'm going to ask you some specific questions on that. Because, for example, we use Jump as for meeting log, and that becomes very useful, particularly for the transcript aspects of it. And we've talked to some of these others, but when you're going into a situation where you're helping to integrate, us humans take a while. If you're going to change your workflow, it becomes more complicated. We use Calendly, which I don't love. I'll just say I'm not super excited about it. And I like how you talk about you're more integrated with how that works, because we have the same challenge with our clients. There's a certain set of data we have, and we're trying to fit that all together. How do you help the advisor when you're starting to integrate, figure out how to do it successfully?
We try to turnkey this stuff as much as possible, right? Out of the box, we have very simple connections to the systems that you use, right? I assume you guys are using Outlook, probably. I assume you said you use Salesforce. And so very simply, you connect those two systems, takes about 5 minutes. And then from there, we start to understand what your data structure looks like. And so if you, for example, let's say you have a set of households, you have 1,000 households, maybe you segment them with different service tiers, AAA, AA, something like that. We start to understand, okay, so what is the cadence that you have with your AAA clients? Oh, you meet with them once a quarter. Okay. When is the last time you had a meeting with them? Where's that data? Is that in Outlook, or is that in some field on the account or the contact object or something like that in Salesforce? And then we essentially build filters, right? So that we can effectively reach out every quarter or every 6 months, or again, whatever the cadence is that you have with them, to automatically send them a notification. Could be through email, SMS, what have you. And we'll continue to automate that sequence until they schedule a meeting, right? And we know that, so then we'll shut down the automation. We'll send them notifications to make sure they show up. And then from there, again, because we're hooked up to Outlook, Salesforce, and then, oh, you have your documents are in SharePoint. Okay, great. So let's connect SharePoint. And then maybe using also Precise FP for intake or other types of content. Let's connect those things. Now the system is aware of the Jones household over here is the same as over here and over here. We're able to pull all that stuff together and again, package that up all very nicely for, say, a pre-meeting brief. From there, you generate a client presentation, you have the meeting, which note taker is joining, transcribing, and so on and so forth. And then from there, either automatically updating Salesforce with notes and tasks and so forth, or having a human review and then pushing those things back with a few clicks. Again, trying to make this as turnkey as possible.
Yeah, but then it sounds like also if you've got legacy systems, you can continue to use those so you're not throwing a huge monkey wrench in it. Because that's when I'm looking at my team, I don't want to throw those monkey wrenches in, because when you see a better process, great, but sometimes it takes a while for us to recognize that. So
change management is probably one of the most difficult things, right, to implement, because it's change. Nobody likes change. And so we try to minimize that as much as possible. And the way that we do that is, again, we try to work with all the things that you have in place today. And we say, look, you're doing all this stuff today manually. Maybe your client service associates are doing those things. Just stop doing them, right? It's not to do something else. It's just stop. Stop sending out those notifications. Let the system do it for you. Those things get booked. You're doing all this pre-meeting prep. Let the AI do it for you, get you 80–90% of the way there. Maybe you need to make a few tweaks, fine. And then post-meeting, again, you have all of this data, right? Change management is actually less, because it's just, don't do it differently, just stop doing 80% of that and let the systems take over.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I like to stop doing stuff that we don't need to do.
Absolutely.
But providing the value, right?
Yeah. Well, that's a topic that comes up a lot when we talk about AI in general and advisors, right? And it's not so much that AI is going to replace advisors, but it does seem pretty clear that advisors that use AI will very likely replace advisors that are not, right? And the best use case, I think, for AI is it allows me to do what is most valuable, which is not scheduling something, right? And even for our assistant in our client support team, that's not a good use of their time either, right? I'd rather they be doing something else other than something that could be taken over by AI. I do have one very specific question, which I've yet to find a good solution for this particular use case. So, we use one of the scheduling systems and we're generally pleased with it. And the way it works is I block out my week, and then I always block out some time, don't book something because I just need some time for myself. I need to get some work done. However, oftentimes there'll be like an important meeting comes up that I need to have scheduled. And I want to send out a scheduling link and include some times that are even in my blocked out time. And this comes up pretty often. It actually came up this week. And we've been using Microsoft Outlook has a tool for this. But for some reason, and I'm sure it's Microsoft saying, you got to do all this stuff and log in because we want to get you in our ecosystem before we let you pick one of these times. Because certain people just can never do it, right? Usually the more tech savvy people can figure out what they need to do, but it's not as easy as Doodle, for example, for these ad hoc type of things where I could just pick times randomly. But what Doodle doesn't do is block it out for me tentatively, right? Because for me, give it 12 hours and slots could be taken because I've got so many people scheduling for me and so many links scheduling for me. What Microsoft does nicely is I can say, here are 5 times, including times within my blocked out time, but it's okay for this one link to do this, and it'll block it out so that way it doesn't overbook that. But Microsoft is hard for other people to use. Doodle we found for these ad hoc scenarios is easy to use, but doesn't block out for me as a tentative. Do you guys do that? And do you do it well?
So we have the ability, I know Microsoft has a product called MS Bookings. It's okay. It's not
okay,
one of
that's really,
Microsoft's
it's not very good.
But yeah. We're hosted on Microsoft. We're big Microsoft fans, but Bookings isn't the most awesome. But we have the ability for you to select time slots and share those with the client. Even if, so you can select specific times and literally share those over email. Tuesday at 5 or Wednesday at 10 and so on and so forth.
Even though it's blocked off on my other one, that's preventing my public scheduling link to get at. Yeah.
Correct. So you can select times irrespective of your working hours, which are basically your kind of public availability. Right. So you do have the ability to do that. It doesn't auto block those times. So if somebody tries to book if you had shared that with them on Monday and they clicked on it on Wednesday, for example, and you had booked something over that time, it wouldn't allow them to book that, but it would offer up the remaining slots to say, hey, this is unavailable, but you can select from these other times if that suits you. So we do have that capability. Scheduling is very personal and quite much more complicated, quite frankly, than I originally expected it to be. And even several years into the scheduling journey, we're still continuing to build out these capabilities, and anything from locations to conference rooms to resources, to dynamic account teams, meaning that I have a client, but I have a primary advisor, I have a secondary advisor, I have a CSA. These two are required. This person is optional. What is the availability overlap? There's a tremendous amount of complexity and nuances all over the place, and we've become good at handling all these kind of edge cases.
Yeah, good at the edge cases is really important. And I imagine, especially if you're plugging into a system like a Salesforce or something where you can see the difference between a client or a potential client, you can actually rank them as far, because for us, if you're already a client, we're going to rank you higher. You've committed to us, we got to commit to you is how we look at it. Are you able to do that too?
We are, and we're also able to create new records, right? When it comes to, if you think about a traditional financial or wealth management website, right? You have your typical kind of crappy contact us form, which is fill out your name and somebody will get back to you. And hopefully somebody actually gets back to that person in a day or two or three. Rather than doing that, let's ask them some qualifying questions perhaps. And then if they meet some qualification criteria, let's get a meeting on the calendar immediately. What are we waiting around for? And if they don't qualify, maybe send them to a landing page, that sort of thing. So we have different form capabilities that essentially allow you to ask certain questions, all custom, and based on certain criteria, route them to the right advisor or to the right person to take that meeting. Again, intake, AI is going to help you get that data, and again, push it into your system of record.
Well, we're working on making that area of our business much better. So I'll be frank, we're going to need to talk more.
That's great. And Chad, you talk about insurance. We're also starting to explore other kind of adjacent markets. So like insurance and tax. We recently did an integration with Agency Block and also Next Agency, which are common in the sort of, again, more in the kind of health insurance space. But anyways, those are adjacent markets that in many cases act similarly.
Yeah. I don't know, it's either crazy smart or stupid, is every time I'm looking for a vendor, I'm like, if I can find someone who's serving the same clients, I like that, because then we're getting some of that experience so I can just understand what it looks, feels, and tastes like. Now, clearly, financial advisory is different than insurance advisory, but there's some similar characteristics.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I'm a huge fan of vertical markets effectively. And that's why we've focused exclusively on wealth, because we know what to say, we know who to talk to, we know what to build. It just focuses every part of the business on our customer.
That's great. Chuck, we're just about ready to land the plane, but you always come up with these great questions. So I wanted to give you a minute. Did you have another one for Arnulf?
Oh man, I did mine early this episode, which was, will AI replace CRMs? Because that is a really top of mind question for me. And I think Arnulf gave us a really good answer for that.
Yeah. No, Arnulf, I've had a good time and enjoyed it. We got to go deep specifically on some things, and I hope that's really helpful for some of the advisors out there. It certainly has some direct use cases for Chuck and I think, or at least something to think about here.
Oh, yeah.
One thing we like to do is we like to know, because it's not just about business interaction, or really good business interaction has to deal with the people, right? We'll use all the tools we can, but understanding who you are is helpful. So we like to ask a question that helps us understand you a little bit more around, how do you want to be known? Or when you look back over your life, what do you want to say? When I think of Arnulf, this is who he is.
I mentioned this earlier. So I really love building products and building systems. As a kid, build Legos, doesn't matter what it is, but really enjoy building things, and building businesses is probably one of the most meaningful things to me, for example, and not just for profit's sake or for exit's sake or for those types of things, but quite frankly, working with teams and building meaningful things that people use every day, right? That's what gives me energy, right? When I talk to a customer and they tell me either they love this, they hate that, and then a week or two later, we deliver them something, which is not typical, quite frankly, because a lot of things just go into some black hole in many places. And seeing their reaction and seeing their usage and then continuing to enhance those things, that's really what gives me energy. And I want to build meaningful businesses that produce a meaningful outcome and a meaningful impact for our customers. And I think that's what we have been doing. That's what I've been trying to do for the last 25, 30 years. It's generally been around productivity and efficiency. I'm a huge process efficiency guy. So leveraging technology to facilitate that gives me energy.
That's great. Well, you found the right fit then. All right. Well, thank you very much. Happy to have you here. Hope everyone's having a great summer. Chuck, until next time. Arnold, thank you.
Thank you both. I enjoyed it.
Good time. We'll see you guys next time.